chance to look at them. Do I hear a motion to accept?
So moved. Second.
Seconded. Any questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Right, opposed. At this point, we have a session for audience participation, not related to any of the matters in front of us tonight. But if you have any other issue you'd like to bring up, this would be a wonderful time to do it, and I will pause for a second and see if anybody has something to add. And if not, we'll go forward. There are no final approvals or site plans or preliminary hearings, so we're going to move to one of the two consequential things we have to talk tonight about. We're going to have a public hearing in the matter of Ayamesh Patel, 10324 Whitehall Garden, Munster, requesting a rezone for parcel 6403-25-25201, 026 located at 20 and 49 across from the Visitor Center from R1 to B3 for future hotel restaurant use, also to put a banner sign on. Before I call the public hearing to order, let me explain how it works. We start the hearing at a particular time. The applicant has a chance to come up and explain what their issue is. Then we ask anybody who is here to speak in favor of the petition be accepted, and we hear what they have to say without comment from anybody else. Then I will ask for anybody who opposes it to come forward, and you'll do the same thing. When you come forward, please state your name and address and then what your issue is. If it's appropriate and the applicant is willing, we may give them a chance to address any substantive issues that come in that we think need clarification, and we will close the hearing. At that point, then, we'll discuss what the hearing is, and we'll ask for a motion from the commission to either accept or deny the petition. After a motion is made and seconded, if seconded, we can then have a discussion among ourselves about it, and you get to hear all of that. And then we vote on it. So that's how it works. Okay? So I'm going to call the public hearing to order now. It is 6:24. And representing the Patels, please come forward, state your name and address, and the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vyumesh Patel. I live at 10324 Whitehall Garden, Munster, Indiana. I'm here to request the rezoning of a parcel located at US 20 and Route 49. I have been the family member of Porter since 2018. That's when I bought Spring House Inn. And we brought a substantial amount in to, bring it to a standard. Today I can proudly say that we are the top rated and most rated hotel in Indiana Dunes. As a part of the extension of the hotel, we bought this land, and the planning was to build another nice hotel so that we can keep the business in town of Porter. Unfortunately, after COVID, the construction costs went off the roof, and we decided to put a hold on it. Meanwhile, there is, the bridge couldn't pass the test, and then the route is shut down. So we are facing a lot of problems with the business. So just to support the business temporarily, we would love to have a banner or a sign next to this land so that we can, bring in more customer to the site. What else can I answer here, if anybody wants?
No, not at this point. If that's all you have to say, then thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And now there's an opportunity for anybody who would like to speak in favor of the rezoning to approach the podium and say your name and address. And we'd like to hear what you have to say.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Klug. My address is 200 Franklin Street, Town of Porter. I am in favor of this. First of all, regarding the banner, the road by the other motel has been closed, and the spa has been closed since 2023. It's probably not going to open until 2026 at the latest. The businesses there have taken a bad hit, And I think the town should encourage helping their businesses and doing things to help their business, and I think the banner is a good idea regarding that, because I don't want to see the town's businesses go under, because that bridge should have been fixed a long time ago. Also, regarding the hotel and the restaurant, that area was actually considered for development a number of years ago for hotel and restaurant and other things like that. It was on the town council between 2008, the beginning of 2008 and the end of 2011. If you want to look it up, the council members were Michelle Bollinger, Todd Martin, Trevin Fowler, John Granite, and Dave Babcock. And Carol Pomeroy was the clerk treasurer. But if you want to look things up, that area was planned, and I believe there was a hotel planned and a restaurant planned and various things for people to, it was considered Gateway of the Dunes, I believe. And I think they were planning to put a roundabout by the visitor center to make traffic easier. But there was a lot of talk about developing that area. So if somebody wants to develop it now, you might want to look and see what the other plans had been back then. And maybe I think maybe this sounds to me like, from what I remember, something similar to what planned on being put in there a long time ago. And I think the town needs more businesses, because you don't make a lot of money for housing developments, any kind of housing developments, because it comes out even, because by the time you talk about the schools and the police and the fire and the street department, it comes out even. The way the town makes money is to have businesses. And that brings in money, and it's also would bring in people that come in to the beach, to the dunes. And this isn't something that's an Airbnb, because everybody worries about Airbnbs. And everybody complains, and they're worried about Airbnbs. And the apartment complex that some people wanted to put up where the water park was, people were worried about being an Airbnb. So this is actually a hotel, so it's going to go under, it sounds like it's going to go under hotels, and you don't have to worry about an Airbnb with this. So I think it's a good idea. And I think that it would be good to look at what was planned back before as to what you might want to do now and what might want to agree with now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is anyone else here to speak in favor of the proposal? Okay, if not, we'll turn to people who would like to speak against the proposal. If you can sort yourselves out, come at one at a time. If you need help, I'm happy to do that. I see someone from the front row, so why don't we go front to back? Please approach the podium.
Sure.
Your name and address.
Yes, hi, Council. My name is Chris Magura. I live at 1220 North State Road 49. It's the property just south of this property that we're discussing. I'd first like to say I'm not opposed to economic development. I think it's great for the town, and I certainly understand the challenges that small businesses face. And so I'm not here to talk about the banner or the billboard, if you will. I totally understand, potentially why that would be helpful. What I'm here to discuss is a few questions that I think myself and my neighbors would love to have answered before anything were to move forward reasonably. Number one is, has a drainage or hydrology study been completed for the site to evaluate how additional impervious structures will affect stormwater runoff to surrounding areas? This property does sit a little bit lower, and it does collect rainwater, and so we are curious how this will affect the drain water. The second question is, how will groundwater and nearby wells be affected to nearby homes? Because our water does come from the ground, it does not come from the city. And so has any sort of groundwater test been done to ensure that our wells will stay safe from contamination, and then also an adequate supply from the lower aquifers? And then the last question I have is, what is the plan for sewage and wastewater capacity? It's to my understanding, there are a lot of sewage lines that run into this area. And so my question is, can this infrastructure accurately support an influx of sewage? And I think the answers to these questions would be really appreciated, I think, as any plan or decision, were to move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Is that it for the first row? I'll invite someone from the second row, perhaps.
My name is Irvin Schrock, 1190 Cardinal Court, Porter, Indiana, 46304. So our house, our property would be directly south of where the hotel would sit also. So we're right behind where a proposed hotel would go. And so, so basically, one of my concerns is our daily life, and hotels operate 24 hours a day, which would mean constant traffic in and out and delivery trucks at all hours, and that would be right behind our house. Of course, our kids are constantly in the woods exploring and playing and enjoying the woods that are there. And if they knocked all those trees down, it would just change everything around there. And like Chris mentioned, the drainage is obviously an issue there, being in the swamp as that is. So just that's one of our concerns, obviously, is if they knocked all those trees down. Privacy is another concern. A hotel means that guests would be looking into our backyard, maybe even our windows and on our deck, and so obviously privacy is a major concern. And then security also, because of people in and out right next to the house there. So that is something to think about. I already mentioned the land itself. It is a swamp because it's right at the bottom of Cardinal there, and all the water goes directly down Cardinal, and then it flows right into those woods there. So if you're going to build something there, obviously it's going to be quite a concern as far as where all that rainwater is going to go. So basically, in conclusion, this isn't about stopping progress for our town. It's very important that our town moves forward, but we're concerned about making smart choices that protect our families and our sense of community that we moved to Porter for. And a hotel really belongs in a commercial area, not in the middle of a neighborhood. So the property is zoned residential. So I guess I would like to see it stay residential, because it is residential for a reason, because we live there. Chris here lives there, and others on our street all live near there. And so it's zoned residential for a reason, and that's because that's how it is. So we would love to stay that way, and we'd like to say no to this location as commercial, and yes to protecting the place that we call home. Thank you.
Yes, the rest of that row is with you. So we'll go to the next row.
I'm with him too.
Okay.
I'd like to hear the proceedings. I'm semi-interested, but I'm.
Right, well, thank you for coming. You guys here to speak on this issue?
Hello, my name is Adrienne May. I'm the CEO of Hospice of the Calumet area, and our address is 1190 North State Road 49. So we're directly south of the property. It borders on our property and kind of right next to our office. So I guess part of the reason that I came today was because I don't have enough information. I mean, I have a lot of the concerns that obviously the other two speakers brought up. I'm concerned about, the drainage, the water. Our property sits, down from the road, and so there's concerns about that. There's concerns about, septic, all those types of things. Obviously, we chose to be there, and people choose to live in the area because of the environment, all the greenery. It's calm, it's peaceful, it's pristine. But we are aware that you want to have economic development too. The National Lakeshore just became the national park. There's more people coming. We need some kind of probably infrastructure in the area to support more visitors to really get the economic benefit of the change. But you have to do it in, I think, a measured way. And, we don't have enough information to really make a decision on that. There's all these questions about, as they said, water, septic, privacy, the increased traffic. That area on 49 right now is kind of a conglomeration. All these roads come together in kind of a weird way, and if people don't know where they're going now, it's kind of hazardous. Sometimes all of a sudden someone decides to veer off if they don't know what they're doing, and, the increased traffic, what would be the plans for that? And as they say, noise and those kinds of things. Obviously, we're not a home, a residence, so we had to get some kind of a variance. So, I'm not opposed to that, but need to do it in an educated manner and have more information. I was disappointed when I got the notice because all it said was it was about a zoning change from, R1 to B3. And, I had to look up what that meant. I had to come to the town to find out what this was all about. Where is the property that's going to affect us? And so it just felt like I had to put a lot of work into finding out even what it was about. And it would have been nice to have a little bit more information to be able to make an educated decision or to be able to have a narrative or talk about it. So at the moment, I'm against it. I'm thinking about access. How does that affect our property? Is there going to have to be some kind of an access road that affects, our land? There's just a lot of unknowns. And I guess I don't really have an opinion about the banner. I didn't really realize that was part of it. So I guess right now I would be against it also. Thank you.
Please.
My name is Bruce Brackney. I live at 1145 Cardinal Court, which is just south of the other people that just spoke. We're at the far south end or close to the south end of Cardinal Court. So we're in that same area that the other people were just speaking earlier. And they are a lot of the concerns I have, they've already raised those, so I won't go back into those. I might reiterate on the traffic issue. That is right at the end of a exit ramp off of Route 20 going south on 49. And when you come off that exit ramp, you have to look at quite an angle, about 120 degrees angle, to see what's coming before you can get on there. And if somebody's trying to merge into that lane, and there's somebody stopped wanting to turn to go into this hotel or whatever it could be some other commercial structure, it's going to cause a problem. Somebody's trying to merge and they're looking that way, and there's somebody stopped right in front of them, and they don't even see them until they're right on top of them. So I think there's an issue with traffic. I suppose that could probably be changed. The traffic pattern could be changed, but that is definitely a problem the way it is right now. I wanted to also talk about whatever. First of all, this is a commercial. It's being zoned as commercial. The talk has been about a hotel, but if it gets zoned commercial and they decide, oh, we don't want to put a hotel there, we're going to sell it to a company, a gas station. Might put a gas station there. As long as it's commercial, anything can go in there that fits within that category. So we don't know for sure a hotel's going to go there. But even if it does, all the other concerns people had about the noise, the extra traffic, what it does to the environment in the area and the water runoff, all those are very valid, and I fully understand those. There's another issue also with the parking lot. You're going to have a parking lot, whatever it is, and that's going to have oil and gas on it. That's going to run off. That's going to be running off into our area, and just depends on where the water goes as to how it seeps into the soil and transfers to adjoining properties. So all the other issues they talked about, I had on my list, but they've talked about them. So I just wanted to raise a couple of other issues, and for those reasons, I'm opposed to this.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Oh, can I say one other thing?
You absolutely can.
Now, regarding the situation that they're in with their business, putting a sign there, I don't have a problem with that, but I know zoning-wise, if it's a residential property, they can't have a sign there like that. I would suggest that if that is a major issue with them, that they try to get to change the, what do you call it, where the rules for residential can be changed under certain circumstances. I can't remember what that is.
Perhaps you mean variance?
Variance, that's what exactly I'm looking
That
at.
they could-
So why they couldn't apply for variance to be able to put that sign there on their residential property, I would see that, I don't see any problem with that. But that's another way that they could go. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, anyone else want to speak against the proposal? Mr. Rotella, make sure there is a fair hearing. If you want, you can try to address any of these. There's no requirement that you do so.
I would like to say,
Sure.
so I appreciate everybody's views on this. One thing is sure that for the retention or the sewers and everything, it's up to the architect. So there will be a proper planning for it. We'll be submitting that to the building department, and once they approve, if everything is up to the code, then we're going to proceed on that. Since this is a commercial, there will be a fence to prevent the privacies for the residential too. So it won't be an open access for any guest to, walk into anybody's lot or anything like that. That's all.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, I'm going to close the public hearing at 6:52. Let me say one thing. Thank you all for coming. I hope you felt that you had your voices heard. I know that we listened to them. All right? We have a few other matters on this before we put this to motion. We had some input from Mr. Mandan.
Before we go there, I just want to add or confirm
Please.
that notice was sufficient, and I would have intervened if not, but notice is sufficient, and I want to make sure the record reflects that.
In other words, there's criteria that the applicant has to follow. They did. Part of
We're
which
all
is,
here, yes.
I'm sure why you all are here. And of course, I don't have Mr. Mandan's thing in front of me right now, but here it is. I will read it. To Porter Plan Commission from James Mandan, our town planner, our petitioner Vyamesh Patel, date September 14th, 2025. Petitioner Vyamesh Patel is requesting a rezoning from R1 to B3 on property located across SR 49 from the Indiana Dunes Visitor Center, northwest of the hospice of the Calumet area, for the purpose of building a hotel and restaurant. The comprehensive plan recommends that this property and additional property to the northwest be used for office service, which is a much less intense use than the petitioner is requesting. Part of the problem with using this parcel for a B3 use is the proximity and the design of the intersection to the two highways. An additional impediment to B3 uses is the proximity of single-family homes on Cardinal Court. For these reasons, I am recommending that this requested rezoning be denied. That is the end of Mr. Mandan, our town planner's input. Mike, as our building director, I just want to give you a chance. We always seek expert opinion from the staff that we have and listen to them. Is there any other background or new information that you would want to provide regarding this one?
Yeah, there's two things that were brought up I just want to comment on first. Jennifer mentioned Gateway of the Dunes. So Gateway of the Dunes was actually across the street behind the visitor center. So that property was set up for hotel and all kinds of stuff, visitor-related items. When the property was donated from Lake Erie land to the national park, that put an end to Gateway to the Dunes. So that was actually across the street, behind the visitor center, on what is now national park property. That was called Munson Place, and that's where that was centered at. It wasn't on this side. That's the east side of the road. With regard to the reason we're here, in the use variance. So what started this was the sign. So the sign that's up there now, and it's covered, was put up a while ago. So it was put up, there was no permit for it, there was no approval for it, and I requested it be covered, and you guys covered it up. So our code states for an off-premise advertising sign, which that is, it's advertising a property that's not on that property. it requires that it's rezoned to B3, and there's a use variance granted, so there's an and. And it's also along a corridor of State Road 49 that requires permitting from NDOT, so it would also be and require a permit from NDOT. So there's 3 requirements for having an off-premise sign. So that's why we're here, is because they're applying to get the sign approved for, first of all, and then for a future hotel. So that's why we're having this meeting. That's how you get the off-premise sign approved. The only way to do it is and, there's 2 different ands involved in that. So once the sign was covered up and all this was put together, we've reached the point we're at now. There is another advertising sign you have on US 20 as you're headed west. You guys have a billboard sign up there right now. The bridge has been an issue, and it's unfortunate. They are the businesses on Mineral Springs Road that are affected by the bridge outage. And we're all cognizant of that and trying to figure out a way to make it better, and none of us have come up with one. Porter County does have that bridge. They've bid that, supposedly awarding that in a few days, and they're gonna start working on that bridge shortly, and then now they're saying late fall, early fall, late fall next year is when the bridge will be completed. So that's all I know about that.
Terrible.
And I'm waiting for an actual schedule from the county, because I don't wanna misrepresent their time frame, but they're telling me late summer, early fall. So that's the schedule for the bridge. There is sewer in that area south of the property that the hospice sits on, so they'd have to get somehow past the hospice property to access the sanitary sewer. There's water across the street. I think it runs near the same area, but there's a water main. It's not right in front of the property. I don't really know the history of the property, other than speaking with the neighbors and walking on it. It's kind of swampy is the word they use, so that's what we go by. If somebody was going to start developing a hotel, obviously they'd go through the process of putting drawings together, and we'd be looking at actual hotel plans. And as they've stated, they've put that back off a little bit because of the economy and issues that happen. So we don't have any hotel plans. We don't have any of that due diligence available. Hasn't been done yet. So really, their sole purpose is to try and get this approved right now for the sign. I don't think we can, well, I'm gonna just say it this way. You have to rezone it and do the use variance, and they have to get an NDOT permit for the sign. So there's 3 ands, or 3 requirements for that. If you rezone the property, then it's open for, as they stated, it's rezoned for any use in B3. So I don't believe you can rezone the property and say it's stipulated just for the sign. That's not how that works. So your decision would be based on rezoning that, and it still has to go to get a use variance, and it still has to go get an NDOT permit. So there's 3 steps to that whole thing. But we are where we are. I was requested when that sign was originally put up, and they followed my instructions very well. They very politely covered it up. I was requested to have it removed, so I'd rather have this go through the process than have arbitrarily take it down.
Yeah.
And then if it was approved, have to put it back up. So that's why it was covered up. I have had a couple people say to me, and I did mention this to you, that when they're coming out of the visitor center, you can kind of see through the sign, and you can sort of see that it says Pizzeria Uno, and it almost looks like it's closed, because when the sign covered up, people are getting the impression that maybe it's not open. So it might be working against you at this point with that, sitting there like that.
Ouch.
But that's, I've had 2 people tell me that. So, Mr. Mandan kind of stated that in there. He didn't specifically mention the sign, but the sign requires the rezoning, so that's why we're sitting here right now.
Thanks, Mike.
Hope that helps or makes it better.
Can I ask a question?
I guess this is not part of the public hearing, but we'll
Yeah.
tolerate one question.
Okay, it can't be rezoned.
Hold on. I need to go to the microphone.
Oh, yeah, sorry, George. Yeah,
So I guess I'm asking,
yeah.
can there be a variance to a R1 that allows to put a sign that is advertisement for off-property? You can't,
The way our code's worded, you have to have the rezone and the use variance. So it doesn't just say you can have a use variance for it.
No.
It's very specific for an off-premise sign.
Okay.
That's what we have to follow. Thank you.
Thanks for asking the clarification. We want everybody to understand everything, including what we are. Here's what's going to happen right now. I'm going to ask the commission if they would like to make a motion to approve or reject. Let me explain something. The Plan Commission is an advisory board. There's almost nothing that we decide. Almost everything we do is simply a advice to our town council. Council is the legislative body that makes all the decision. So I will ask for a motion for a recommendation for approval or a recommendation to deny it. If one of those motions is made, if the motion is seconded, then we can have a little discussion and get questions back and forth among ourselves, etc. And then we'll take a vote. If the first motion dies, the other motion could be made. We'll see it, and that's how things work. So it's kind of not completely decided right now, no matter what tonight, because it is up to the town council, just so that everybody sees how this democracy works here.
And you're talking about the sign right now.
No, we're talking about the petition. The petition is to change from R1 to B3.
Yeah.
The sign, once this is done, presumably goes back to a matter of enforcement, which Mike has explained why he's given some grace period to sort the things out. That's not our bailiwick. We are not talking about the sign. We are talking about
Okay.
the petition for change. So,
Mr. President, before you go further, can I
please,
maybe remind the commission of the considerations that need to be before any motions are made? So under Indiana Code 36-7-4-603, the considerations by the Plan Commission and the legislative body or the town council at future meetings shall pay reasonable regard to the following 5 factors. 1 is the comprehensive plan. 2 is the current conditions and character of current structures and uses in the district, of which you've heard some conversation this evening. 3, the most desirable use for which the land in each district is adapted. 4, the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. And 5, responsible development and growth. So those are the things that you're going to pay due regard to in any consideration or motions that you make in further discussion.
so at this point, I would ask if any commission member wants to make a motion to approve, make a recommendation for advice to approve or advice to deny the petition.
I make a motion, we deny.
We recommend
petition.
deny, right, okay.
I will second that.
Okay, seconded. All right, discussion, questions?
Yes.
And may I interject?
Please.
Just because we wouldn't be denying, so your options are favorable recommendation,
Unfavorable.
unfavorable, or no recommendation, so not
Unfavorable.
deny.
Unfavorable. And I'd like to explain myself on that. First of all, the spa owner, thank you very much what you've done at the spa. Appreciate that. We need businesses in this town. As far as the groundwater, the wells and the sewers, that all would have to be addressed, of course, to protect the people that live there. This is something I've always believed in. I've been on the planning commission for over 20 years. It's residential now. The people that live there moved in, it was residential. I always felt I didn't have a right to change that. It's like I've always said, if you move into O'Hare Field and you complain about the airplanes, that's your problem. But if there's no airplanes there and you're in a residential and now an airplane port wants to come in, I don't think that's right to the people that live there. And that's the only reason I'm against your going in there. These people live there, that's residential. I wish it was commercial, but in good faith, I'd have to vote against it only because of that. Because they bought with the idea that was gonna stay residential on that. So to put a business there, I don't think would be fair to the people that live there. And I'm just expressing my opinion, that's all.
Thanks, Jim. Any other comments or questions? You happen to be leaning forward, so yes, I'm looking at it.
No comment, thank you.
Mary?
No, it all makes sense, what we've discussed as far as I'd have to support unfavorable on it.
Yeah. Brian, anything else to say? All right, in which case, let me remind you, you are voting for an unfavorable recommendation. So if you say yes, that means you want the petition to not be approved. All right. Karen, would you please call roll?
Mr. Erickson?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Bekowski?
Yes.
Mr. Malinger?
Yes. Thank you. So the motion carries, and we will carry an unfavorable recommendation to the town council.
And so the process from here is within 10 days, we will prepare a certification that will be signed by the president, attested to by the clerk, and then sent to the town council, which then starts the clock for the town council considering that. And there will be future process, not to step on your toes there, but this will be heard again before the council because the council is the ultimate decider on the issue.
Right. Probably within a month, probably, but it will be on the agenda. Sure, Bruce.
Will there be public comment when it goes to the council?
It depends if they allow that. There's public comment at the beginning of every meeting anyway, so at the meeting at which it's going to be on the agenda, and there'll be a public notice of that as well as what agenda it will be. I mean, that council's pretty good about, as well as this body, about process and giving everyone a say. So I would imagine there will be, but at minimum, it won't be a public hearing like this, though. So at minimum, you'll have a chance, and their public comment is at the front of the meeting.
Really want to thank you all for coming, including you. We appreciate your business in town. We look forward to continuing to have you as a contributing member, and we really hope that you all enjoyed democracy. And we invite you to stay, because we're actually not done, but we understand if you have to go. So thank you all. All right, we have no findings of fact. The other business we have is old business. As you recall, last month we took up the issue of update the framework document for updating port ordinances for rental and accessory dwelling units. You all should have the work in process document, which I would suggest that we start with where we dropped off. That leaves only a few pages to go through. If we have time and stomach for at the end, if you guys want to go back and revisit anything else, we will. Just to get an idea what the process is, let's say we finish this tonight, or at least at the next meeting then. As with the last time, we'll try to get all the changes that's discussed tonight into a new document, and we'll ask that the final document be.
This isn't really recording. We're trying to record, but this is gonna, all of the.
Okay.
Could you step outside, please?
Can we ask you guys to take the conversation outside? We do love the fact that you're here.
Sorry.
Yeah, the final document will come back to us for a final vote, and of course amending. Almost certainly, whatever the edits we make, we're going to ask our attorney and building director to make sure that we polish it and we don't make any egregious errors. So you'll see it again at least one more time after those guys have a little polish on it. Okay for process comments? All right. As we did last time, I propose I'll walk through the thing, more or less a paragraph at a time, and invite comment on it. So I'm on the page that starts with accessory dwelling units. I'm not going to read through those two paragraphs, nor am I not going to read through the benefits numbered 1 through 7, because I think the substantive stuff we have to talk about are the recommended changes. This is sort of the justification for it. Unless somebody wants to comment on something, in which case, by all means, I invite you to do so. So I'm referring to paragraph under purpose, the next paragraph, the numbered list 1 through 7, and then the in summary after that. All right, let's get into the meat of this. You see, we already killed off a page and a half on that thing. So the next paragraph talks about what I think the folks who pulled this together talked about, the substantive issue, who can occupy an ADU and whether they can be rented. Recall that the justification for accessory dwelling units is given a hint by many people, is given a hint by their name. You know, people call them the mother-in-law suites or the family suites or something like that. Once you build them, though, the question becomes, well, who else can live there? And can they be rented or not? And as the paragraph here says, to resolve both issues, there's several approaches possible, and this is what we need to think about. In common to all the buildings in the case of detached ADUs. ADUs must be required to meet all other zoning standards, except for the number of buildings in the case of detached ADUs. And I think that's fairly non-controversial, but it does have to be reflected in here. And two, if rented, comply with all other rental regulations. In addition, we have considered two possibilities. That should be the word two there. One, ADUs only be rented if either the ADU or the main unit are owner occupied. That is a approach. Or alternatively, the ADUs may not be rented separately from the main dwelling unit, but may be made available to a renter who leases the entire property. So at least there's someone on site. Now, there are other possibilities, but to focus the discussion, the document puts those down right there. And I invite you to consider those two, and certainly invite you to suggest other possibilities for how to resolve this issue of who lives there and can they be rented. And I'll pause.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
For the accessory dwelling units, is there gonna be any talk about whether they are on the same utilities, or if they're separate utilities in terms of, the natural accessory dwelling unit? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's very clear.
Because if it's a mother-in-law suite, is your mother-in-law gonna have, separate nips to all the water, or is it going to, or is it gonna be under one, the main house?
Right, so this framework does not address this issue at that time, at this time right now. Mike, do you want to add anything to that?
Question.
Yeah, it's a very good question.
Yeah. This is one thing that I don't know a whole lot about other than what I've read about, because we've not done anything like that. This has been done differently in different locations. We've had the BZA consider these type of units for a little while, and generally that's use variance requests. So we've only approved, I can think of two off the top of my head, but I'm not sure if there's any more than two, but we've approved a couple of these. They were both separate units in a garage, essentially. They weren't part of the house. So that was, Mr. Mandan isn't here, but when we started talking about this quite a while ago, he did have some good input on that, which I don't have in front of me, with his recommendations on where we put it. And I wish I had that with me, because I'd like to use it to discuss that. But you could put it in the house, you could have it in the garage, you could have it in different locations. I have one person right now building a garage that would like to put one of these in their garage for their mother-in-law. And I said, hold off on that, can't permit it. So just build the garage the way you came in with your permit, but don't add anything to it yet, because we don't have anything to approve. We're working on a code. A lot of this came up in COVID with like granny suites. A lot of people call them granny suites. There's some places that build little prefab units and people pop them in their backyard, and it's like you stick your in-law in a shed in the backyard somewhere. So that was kind of popular back in COVID, and I thought that was a little odd, but I actually had people contacting me that are buying properties to rent and asking if they can do this. So I'm a little leery that a lot of these rental properties are all of a sudden going to have a unit pop up in their backyard, and they're basically going to be renting two properties on the same property. And that's sort of the worm can you open when you do this. So some people's houses are set up kind of to do this now if they wanted to. My house is like that. My house has two, was built originally for an in-law suite. And unfortunately, the mother-in-law passed away, and the guy ended up losing his house, and we got a foreclosure house. That's how we got the property. But we have a separate master bedroom, living room, and kitchen in our basement. because of this. That's just the way the house was when it was purchased. So, we don't rent it out, and I don't like people in my house, so that's a whole different thing. But it's very difficult to do something like this and then regulate whether or not they're actually in, relatives that live in the space or if they're just renting it out. And we've talked about that a little bit before, but how do you actually, how or can you regulate that? You know, once you approve the ADUs, I don't think you can really nitpick who's living in it or staying in it, but it's very difficult to do that. We'd obviously have a registration process, it's part of the rental code, so there'd be a way to register those, but we have to determine if we want it, if we do, how do we want to address it? Is it in the house? Is it in a garage? Is it, or could it be either? Is there a specific way that you know we like it or not like it, or how we want to do it? Jennifer's question's good. Is it separate utilities or not separate utilities? The whole idea behind this is it's an extra unit on the property. It doesn't have a separate address. So it's still just one address, and that's intended to be a dwelling unit for a family member, but how you regulate that, I don't know.
Well, in most cases,
I'm sorry.
well, hold on, before we go further, so the utilities are generally gonna be driven by the utility, whether you have to have separate meters.
Yeah.
That's generally who's gonna drive that. It is where, if there has to be a separate meter, or there's a sub-meter. So usually not coming from the municipality.
You're saying it would be a separate meter to be a...
I'm saying the utility company, NIPSCO, for instance, would drive that.
Okay.
So that's one thing. Two, you know, if you did it, and I would encourage everybody to, you know, research, you can, Carmel has considered this in 2021. It was a big deal, right? And they voted no, but it's coming back because market changes, demand changes. You know, one way would be is if you decided not to do it and you keep it in the purview of some kind of variance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then with a variance, like everything else, you can have conditions on the approval of a variance, which then gives you a little bit of authority to check and revoke that variance. But the difficulty is once it's there, right? These people who want to pop something in their backyard, it's becoming more and more popular to have a mini subdivision of tiny homes, right? That's what people would like to do to maximize, so.
Chris, can I ask you a question?
Let me
Go
respond to
ahead.
that first, and then Jim, I'll give it to you next.
Go ahead.
So I think the utility has been answered. I want to underscore the point that I think Mike and Chris just made. Let's say we decided to punt and we do nothing. Mike's message is, it's going to come up anyways. It's going to happen. It'll go to the BZA. A reason for us to consider to do this is we can set guardrails. And that's really what this is all about. The issue will not go away.
And when we discussed this before, Mr. Mandan's recommendations were in the context of a variance. We could put it in the code and say it requires a variance, and just put recommendations in the code, but still require that you get a variance for it. So that's another option.
Yeah. And
Much like the rental.
Right.
Yes.
So it would require a variance, but you could put the guardrails on it there and say, you know, it's not just a permitted use, but it's a use variance is required to get them. So that's another option.
right.
It just puts parameters on it instead of recreating that every time we have a use variance pop up at a BZA meeting. We have a set of established criteria we can follow.
Right, and one of the reasons why this issue of ADU was grafted into, the rest of the things we're talking about was rental, was simply because it brought up the issue of, well, can they be rented or not? And if they can be rented, then should they follow the same rules that we're talking about? So the idea was, well, let's talk about it at the same time so we can keep all these things in mind. Just to kind of update you, Indy, Fort Wayne, and Culver have versions of ADUs that, by right of demand, that they've done. Michigan City has a version of it. They call, you have to get a special exception use. And what's common to all four of those is they say, if you're gonna do this, you gotta follow all the other rules. And that, in fact, is one of the points to get it in here. So the construction of it cannot, if we choose to do this, the construction of it could not break any other development standard when we do it. If you're gonna rent it, you have to register and do everything else. So that's a reason why we're bringing it up at the same time and why these guidelines, why we want to consider those guidelines at the same time. So Jim, you were gonna make a point.
Well, I hope I'm not jumping ahead. Chris, you know the group I'm working with. We put a limit of how many people could be in a house. And we're gonna be challenged on that because of a parent who has custody of her minor children occasionally. She's divorced. And she has grown-up children. When I read this whole thing, I was concerned about the number, how we can pick what number can live in a house and the relationship. You know what I'm saying? Divorced couple, 3 minor children, 3 grown children. We put a limit of 2 people to a unit. Now we're saying, how could you do that? You tell me I can't have my adult child come in and live with me? 2 adult childs, that's 3 people. So I just wondered, reading this whole thing, if you think we'll have a problem on that.
Well, I think there are circumstances that you can limit who occupies, but yeah, I don't think we're there yet in terms of what avenue you wanna go down
Okay.
right, with those. But do I think there are ways?
I'm jumping ahead.
And there's also, there's the can, but should you, right? And I think that's some further conversation going forward too, is even if you can, do you want to? But that's
Okay.
another day, I think.
Thank you.
Jim, you're not online. I mean, let's return to this. Let me remind you, we met last time, we had a way of talking about density of housing, and basically we pulled it out for
Yeah, that's what I was
discussion right there.
concerned about.
Right, so it's gone right now, right? But let's revisit at the end of getting through the ADU, and, you know, we've had some time to think about it,
Okay.
or against.
I think Jennifer's.
Jennifer?
Yeah, hi, okay, so how do you tell the difference between somebody living in an ADU and having a roommate? You said your basement's fixed up like an apartment. Say Marcia gets mad at you and kicks you out, and one of her divorced friends moves in and stays in the basement.
Love that, yeah.
And
Yeah.
the whole idea is, okay, maybe this divorced friend, and I've seen people do this, especially people who are divorced or widowed, because they don't want to be alone. And sharing expenses, so this person gives her money for the mortgage and the utilities and maybe, you know, okay, he has a separate kitchen, you know, and different things like that. So how do you tell the difference between somebody having a roommate, which nowadays more people need to have roommates, or need to have, you know, their adult children move into their basement if there's an emergency? And how do you tell the difference between somebody living in an ADU and somebody just having a roommate?
I have no idea.
That's another very good question.
Right, I have no idea.
Because
I
nowadays,
don't know.
people are doubling up on housing more.
Mhm.
I mean, back, before World War II, that was a norm. Kids didn't move out.
Sure.
Hey, people, my mom's parents rented out half their house during the Depression.
Yeah,
They needed money.
you've just done a great job, Jennifer, of illustrating the history of this.
Yeah.
Before World War II, this was not an
So
issue.
basically,
Yeah.
I think that's an
Yeah,
issue
the-
that needs to be addressed, so that is in terms of this is an ADU and this is just a roommate.
Or not. Maybe it needs to not be addressed. The thing that we're trying to address is someone's ability to modify their house to accommodate it. That's what we're trying to decide. We're trying to avoid deciding who lives with people, because that's a sticky wicket, and we need to get out of
Well,
that.
yeah, and I think to that point, it may be that some exist, and I don't like using the catch-all of grandfathering, right? But there's probably a lot of that already going on, right? And so that really isn't what the reach of this is. It's more the development and/or the pivot from current housing, or somebody has a commercial structure that they want to turn into a living dwelling downstairs, and upstairs that might be a variance, right? Or there might be some exceptions. So I think part of it will be solved by some of the status quo gets to continued, and it's grandfathered or a non-conforming use because the law changed, but it was legal when the law changed. And then the new ADUs will have to go through the process. So any new construction, that's likely how that probably plays out, because otherwise it's a nightmare and probably impossible to
Right, so,
address.
and I'll draw a line under what Chris is saying. This is about someone coming in and saying, I want to change my house. and
Or
make a
build
change.
one, right?
Or
Yeah.
build one. It is not about someone coming in and say, I want someone to live with me. That's got nothing to do with us. It's, do I have a right to change my house in a way that was not previously permitted under R1? But it's a very good illustrating point to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, like, if you're renting a room in your house, that's not an ADU, that's just a room in your house.
Right.
Um,
You would be presumably covered by the new rental ordinance,
Right.
which we're working on.
And honestly, the rental ordinance being with the rental, anybody can rent a room in their house anytime, period. I mean, there's not really any code that covers that.
Right.
It's the rental code that we're working on is much more involved than that. But the ADU is typically something added, so there's a comment in here about adding it to a garage inside the house, you know, attached, detached, whatever, put in the attic. I did think of another one. We did a use variance on a house down the street for an attic apartment that was there years and years and years ago, and the homeowner resurrected that. She got the use variance for that to finish it out and rent it. So it's probably something built or added, not necessarily what you already have in your house. So I think that's what we're trying to address is we're adding something. There are, I can think of a handful of grandfathered in existing things right now that they're gonna stay grandfathered in the way they are.
Yeah.
I hate to use that term, but that's the best term I can think of. You know, existing non-compliant structures.
Legal
Legally-
existing non-conformance.
Yeah, legal non-conforming structures we already have.
That's why we pay Chris the big
So
bucks.
this is to go forward with something, if somebody wants to add it in, and how do we address it, and how do we codify it, so.
So bearing in mind those questions of how are we going, if we get there, how are we going to express any limits on who lives there, which is what this last paragraph talked about. I suggest we now walk through the 7 substantive bullets under draft guidelines, because at the last one, we're gonna encounter this issue of, well, who can live there and who can rent, all right? So the first one is really the defining thing. It's the reason why we're proposing to have some ordinance changes about ADUs so that people will know if they can or cannot do it, and each one doesn't have to go to the BZA, like Mike is saying there. So we're suggesting, as it reads right now, that an ordinance be written that enables accessory dwelling units to be built by right on single-family lots in R1 or R2 zone of the town, not city, town, if all development standards are adhered to, except for allowing an additional building on the lot for detached ADUs. And then it defines those ADU cases, and maybe, Mike, we need to add one. ADUs may be connected, such as an attic converted into a studio loft, or disconnected, like a garage turned into an apartment. For detached ADUs, restrictions on adding one building or dwelling unit would be waived, though all other standards, e.g. setbacks, must be adhered to. In other words, if you can get an ADU, but you have to obey all the standards, all the development standards, except potentially a detached ADU, you would get a buy on the number of buildings, but you still have to do all the rest of them. So there's 2 things here. Are we going to say that proposing an ADU is something that you do by right if you follow all the development standards, if you do the permitting process for everything else, or not? So that's the gist of this one here.
And I want to add to that, just so people understand, sometime in the past, there's several locations in town where there's more than one house on a lot. And I'm going to change the wording to principal structure. So our code is based on principal structure, accessory structure. Principal structure is your house. Accessory structure is your garage, shed, pole barn, whatever. There's a few spots in town where there's more than one house on a lot. And again, they're legal non-conforming. And you probably drive past a couple of them all the time and don't think about it, because you wouldn't know there's no lot line in between them. But there's a few of those now. A lot of what we're doing is trying to eliminate non-conforming properties going forward. So the reason that's mentioned in here, you're talking about single-family lot, to get approval to build another principal structure is the issue. You can't just pop another principal structure on a lot, it's against the code right now. So you're not allowed to do that. You can only have one principal structure on a lot. You also can't build an accessory structure on a lot that doesn't have a principal structure. So you can't just pop up a pole barn or garage on an empty lot and never put up a house. And Porter County has the same rules as we do. You can't do that. Requires a use variance. If you were going to request to build a pole barn and then a year later build a house, we will put a time limit on that if you approve it. Because we don't want people living in their pole barns for the rest of their life. So that's part of the reason this is in here, is you can't just build that without, you can't, it's against code to build a second house on a lot.
So
if we were gonna codify it, that would allow it.
Yeah, so if we go forward with this, then we should adjust the language here to make clear that case about the principal structure being there first, and your comments there.
And I think it's also gonna trigger some other review to make sure, as you were saying, the other standards, but for instance, lot coverage.
Yeah.
That's probably, I mean, those things are gonna have to be adjusted, right?
Right.
Likely.
And in fact, sort of the next bullet point sort of addresses that. It says applicants must first file for, and the language used here, it says, pre-authorization for an ADU before requesting a building permit. At that time, the building permit would ensure that the proposed ADU would comply with our guidelines, like the things that Chris just talked about. Now, for the record, this was written, oh my God, Mike, a year ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. Michigan City, as I mentioned, they have something like this. I think they use their special use exception, as the mechanism that this thing calls pre-authorization for an ADU. It's the point is, you gotta put that up front, and then that is part of their review. And an interesting thing about the Michigan City, because there is a process around that, so, you have a right to build, but you still must follow the process. The Michigan City special use exception says that that shall be done by the Plan Commission, not the BZA.
Yeah, Rob, can I ask what the I was reading this before and I didn't understand what pre-authorization looked like. Is that just?
Somebody would say, hey, I want to build an ADU on this property, and we'd probably have a form or information we'd request to review that and see if it even would work.
Oh, okay.
So maybe.
Kind of what I thought it meant.
I mean, if say it was say it's a small downtown lot, which aren't as small as you think they are, but they're different from big subdivision lot where setbacks are different, and size of the lot's different. Will it fit? Will there be a lot coverage issue? Will there be a setback issue or something like that? There's some smaller lots in older parts of town that you'd want to see if it actually fit. I get phone calls all the time I had one today I want to buy this property, can I build a pole barn on it? And I'll look at it and I'll go, yeah, you can fit a pole barn here, and you can do that. And then they're going to buy the house. Well, if they can't fit the pole barn on it, and it's important that they have the pole barn for all their stuff, and it won't fit, they won't buy that property. So we do that now. We screen things that way. They call and ask for information, and I go over it with them on the phone. But we'd probably have some sort of formal document that we'd have people review to see if it would even work on their property before they go any further with it.
Okay.
So that's what that means.
And to that special exception part, that takes it out of the by right, right? So I do think there's a distinguishing, by right means you just get to do it as long as you abide. The special exception, not advocating for one, but it might give you a little bit more of the control, and it may also, you may decide we're gonna put some special conditions with that exception. So a lot of times there might be for each kind of use, so you may have a section of the zoning code that changes for ADUs, And then under special exception, this is a permitted special exception upon approval, but then you put other conditions in there of, none of which I have anything to define tonight, but again, it's just a matter of where you see this going and how much control you wanna have over the process.
If we went that route, then perhaps the very first statement of the first bullet would be say, accessory dwelling units may be built.
With the
Not may,
special exception.
not may be built by right, but may be built, and then we leave the special exception in there.
That's assuming that's what you, I mean, it may
If-
be that the thought is everybody, the issue is, does everybody all of a sudden get to have ADUs everywhere?
Yeah.
You have a town full of, and that might be all right if that's what you, if that's what the pleasure is, but.
Can I maybe ask an ignorant question?
It's the time to.
Forgive me. Like, when you talk about a variance, I know when you go to apply for a variance, there's the 5 state standards that you have to meet to have that accepted. With the special exception, is that more of, hey, I'm not talking about anyone specific, but maybe there's someone that you know that they have a dilapidated home and it's not even fit for them to live in. Now they're applying for an ADU. Does that mean that we could maybe weed them out? Not that we would, but does that give you the town power to do that?
What do you mean weed them out?
Say, we give ADUs through special exceptions and you haven't followed these other, not building codes, but town codes. We understand that the building that you're building, the new building that you're building will be up to code, but you haven't followed all of these other regulations
On the existing structure.
of the existing structure. So why would you allow a second one on there when there's already some problems that the town is facing? So that's what I don't understand about special exception.
Well, I think the special exception is just another, it really does work like those other variances. In fact, it's probably a little more requirements closer to the use variance versus the standard development, but you know, they're gonna have to go and show how it's gonna improve values, do all of the general without getting into the details, but I mean, there are some communities, I don't know offhand if you have them, but there are some communities that say, we're not issuing a building permit if you're out of compliance, or you have any violations on your property.
So it would be the variance plus extra.
Or you take that into account of why we're not doing that, or you make it a condition that, hey, you're going to do this as well. Because no matter what, the BZA is always entitled to put conditions on whatever gets approved.
In fact, the issue, the significant issue that Tara's raising is an issue whether we had a variance process or the special use process. Can we at either point say, wait a minute, your current property's not up to spec? This has to stop right here. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
But that, some of them, just sorry to interrupt, but some of that might come out to Mike's point, though, of the pre-qualification of, hey, you don't have a shot here.
Okay.
You're not even close. But I think either way, your concerns can be addressed, that, let's say Mike says, oh, you're cool, and he's the decision maker, you can apply, the decision still has to be made by BZA or whomever, or the planning commission, if that's what you decide. I think either way, it'll be fairing it out, to be able to address your concerns, to make sure that they're in compliance, and, yeah, they have a half caved in roof that they've never done
Yeah.
anything, and they wanna add this new addition for an in-law, right?
So to add to that, there's 2 things that pop into my head with your question. One is unsafe building and the other one's non-conforming structure. If you have a house with code violations, then that could be a question on the pre-authorization form. Are there any code violations? Yes, well then stop, your roof's caving in, like, just to make something up. Or a big hole in the wall, or you have an unsafe structure, you're not gonna get approval for an ADU unless you bring your property into compliance. So that's a good way to do that, actually.
That's really good, yeah.
We have a special use permit process now that hasn't been used, I don't think, the entire time we've been here. So we have a mechanism for that in some documents now, if we wanted to utilize that or call it something else, but we have that now.
And within that, you can make further requirements for ADUs specifically, including, for instance, maybe just a prong that says you don't have any current code violations.
Yeah.
But maybe the whole, and that's a whole separate conversation that Mike
Yeah.
has initiated of some technical review type stuff to ferret them out so that you're not spending your time for something that shouldn't even be before you.
Right.
We already have a non-conforming code, so if you have, and there's non-conforming properties all over town, but if you have a non-conforming property, that might be another issue. If you're increasing the non-conformance, then you're not supposed to do that. So
Right.
that's two things I said just popped in my head: unsafe building and non-conforming building, so.
Well, like lot coverage, right? I mean,
Right,
that's
lot
gonna be a
coverage.
huge one that you guys are probably for
Setbacks,
ADUs.
yeah.
You're probably gonna have to allow more lot coverage for
Correct.
ADU.
Yeah, either that, or if it was gonna be outside of the building, separate structure, either you would say, well, we exclude the ADU or something like that. I don't know.
Or you
we'll
allow
figure-
50%,
Right,
for
or,
instance.
yeah, we'd have to make some.
Okay,
solution for
so that we need to consider in that previous point where we
What
say,
what I'm hearing is, I think we're leaning towards not to approve it by right, but we should have a process.
yes,
We should define the process and have some sort of permit, special use, or whatever we want to call it.
yeah.
to do.
I'm not leaning one way or the other on, what Michigan City call it, special use exception or pre-authorization
Right.
process. I don't have a feel for the differences between those two. It has to meet, as an example, the issues that Tara's bringing up.
Mhm.
And at that time, you would have to review things like the rest of the guidelines, and we probably should consider how we want to handle lot coverage,
Yeah.
because that could be one. But I don't have a strong feel for a special use exception versus a pre-authorization process.
I think the real difference is controlling, the pre-authorization is really check the boxes.
Yes, correct.
So that one is really wide open and it's almost by right as long as you make, the
Yeah.
special exception is giving you more control to navigate so that, I mean, it might be you want a whole community of ADUs. That's okay with me, if that's okay with you. But I think the special exception makes it more difficult to do, but possible to do, so that they have to, it's much like the rentals, right? You have to jump through the hoops if you want it, but the town has certain mandates to try to control how that unravels.
So a practical expression of the difference that you just talked about was a pre-authorization would be a rigorous process and forms and stuff. And it's Mike's job to take care of it. It never comes before the plan commission.
But it's more by right,
Special use
though.
exception,
Yeah.
special use exception would be, well, it's have the same rigorous process, everything, but the decision would come before a body, presumably the plan commission.
Yeah, but let's, for Mike, if they do it by the I think the and correct me if I'm wrong, really the only intention is to say, hey, is this worthy? Do we recommend you
Right.
go forward because you don't have a shot and you're
Right.
complying with our process? You're probably gonna have that technical review before, regardless.
We sort of do that now with anything that goes before Plan Commission BZA goes through me anyway.
Mhm.
So I look at it before it ever goes to you guys anyway. And
Right.
some things don't go to you. They're just like, no, you can't do that, and that's the end of it, so.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't think
So
I would
that
get.
happens now, it's just not formalized.
Right,
Yeah, so I think that would, you're gonna have that no matter what, but that's really just Mike's courtesy input, for lack of a better
Right,
description, the
yeah.
amount of time that he spends on, even the regular person who wants to build a house in a properly zoned lot that doesn't need anything, you spend a lot of time with it.
Yeah.
That will be the same, so I think
Same.
that's a non-issue. The two issues for you is by right, then you're gonna determine what zoning areas those are permitted, and they're just allowed as long as you comply with all of it, and you do no other changes. The special exception says, we're cognizant that these exist, we want to work with people to allow them, and we understand the nature of the market and where things are moving, and how families are operating, but you have to qualify and meet these, much like a use variance or a development standard variance. So that is the main, it'll make it tougher, but it gives you control so it doesn't get out of hand.
Yeah.
But it still permits them.
but it still permits them, right?
You know, for instance,
Yep.
like solar farms, right? LaPorte County, that's a big deal right now, and they're trying to make it impossible, and that's a special exception use, but if you look at some of the requirements, and I don't think that's what you're trying to do here, but again, gives you more control to do it that way.
Yep.
I'm leaning towards the special exception.
I'm on the same page with.
You agree? Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea.
I
of
am
having-
too.
but
You're saying,
controlling.
we're setting ourselves up for some work, but it's either us or the BZA, frankly. Because it's not gonna go away. Okay. There's consensus here.
Can I ask another question concerning your home specifically? You have, in my home as well, like my home, I've previously rented it out, love having people there.
Yeah.
Frozen banana bread in my fridge at all times for anyone that stops by. But since it is built as a mother-in-law suite, I believe that's what it says in the building codes, I couldn't build another. I don't use it for that right now, but I still, even if it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And for your home too, you have something, so it's kind of like off the table, you couldn't.
Yes, you would never say never, you would have to get a variance, and that's assuming however you would word that. So that's the,
Yeah, our house is a walkout ranch, but it's 2 houses on top of each other. So there's a master bedroom, another bathroom, kitchen, living room, and the basement. That used to have, Marcia's kids used to live down there. So when we have people come over, it's a lovely place to stay. But that's how the house was built, because the gentleman that started the house, actually his mother-in-law and his mother were contributing money, and they were gonna live in the house, and they both passed away, and then foreclosure happened. So that's how we got the house. But it's a unique property. It's 2 houses on top of each other.
And I don't feel as though mine's that unique, it just has a big master bedroom.
Yours is not like that, yeah.
But in those cases, I could still apply, but I would just have to. And I feel like there's a lot of people that have that.
There's a few around that are built like that
Well, the only reason
already exist, yeah.
you're not gonna apply because yours is built.
But if I am not using it like that and I'd like to apply, I think Chris is saying I can, it would just be special use and you'd have to explain that.
and I think we have to be careful as we're defining these to make, for instance, the preference may be yours doesn't fall under the definition of ADU, that you don't have an ADU as you're looking to define
Under
it.
the building code, when that was built, it does say mother-in-law suite, but it
So
doesn't.
what I'm saying is that when we're looking at this, some of what you're doing in this is gonna trigger changes in other parts of the code. So that we might update that definition of how it exists now.
Okay.
So that, for instance, and I don't know what the configuration of your house, but it may be that that's not the intention now and moving forward is that you have an in-law suite or whatever, an ADU, and so that you do qualify for that. And so I think there are ways to look at it.
So maybe another good example of why we should be using the special exceptions, because there's different layouts, and then you can look at those.
Yes.
They're all different, yeah.
And the neighborhood and the circumstances, yeah. But if I have 2 entrances, et cetera, right now, and I'm not renting to anybody, but tomorrow I wanna rent to somebody, it's got nothing to do with ADU. I'm simply renting a room.
Right.
And the rental regulations apply,
Yeah.
there's no ADU. If I'm gonna go to Mike and say, I got a circular saw and a hammer and a bunch of lumber, that's when this ADU thing would trigger.
Yeah, and we specified further down before where we stopped having a separate entrance.
Yeah. In fact, let's go on a little bit, and we can go backwards as much as we want, but let's get through the full context here. The next one, actually, I'll read it. An ADU only be permitted on a property that has an existing occupied residence. That may take care of your principal residence issue that you were bringing up, Mike.
Yeah.
So there's that. Only one ADU may be added to a property. Pretty self-explanatory. Here's the one Mike just referred to. All ADUs must have an exterior entrance separate from the main room. Separate mail addresses will not be issued by the ADU. I don't remember the reasoning behind those 2 sentences. I just know that when we studied this and we downloaded copies of it.
Separate entrance, it creates a duplex.
Yeah.
And it's single-family residential, so we don't want 2 addresses, because then we've got a duplex, which is a whole different thing. We're trying to, it's fuzzy, but we don't want a duplex, so the ADU doesn't have a separate mail address. just a
Ah.
separate door. Otherwise, it's a duplex, and that's a whole different issue.
And which might then drive the meters and all of those things as
yeah.
well.
That's why.
But we and the other towns, Chicago, Homewood, Park Forest, Evanston that we looked at, they all said they had to have it's an ADU if it has an exterior entrance.
Right.
Yeah,
But like mine, theoretically, you can walk out the back door down to the basement, but
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily, I wouldn't say it has a separate entrance.
yeah. Otherwise, you're renting a room.
Yeah.
Okay, there's that. Two more, and then we can go backwards as much as we want. Any proposed ADU that would not adhere to Porter zoning ordinance development standards must be handled as any other proposed zoning variance. So if you had some idea that didn't meet all the other qualifications, and you still wanted to do it, there's still a process. You just don't go through the ADU process, you go through our regular BZA. So nobody's denied what they have today. You wanna ask for something different, you can ask. And then the last one, an ADU may be, okay, this is where the rubber meets the road on, going back to Jennifer's question and everything else. An ADU may only be rented if either the ADU or main residence is occupied by the property owner. The owner must follow all rental ordinances. Other stipulations could be made. This was the sentence that was written down as a place to start the discussion about the issue brought up earlier about, well, who can live in an ADU? You built it for your grandmother, she passed out, who can live there?
And this applies to short-term rentals as well. Like, you can live in the house and your ADU can be a Airbnb. As long as you're living in the house. And that'll be defined by property tax, or if you file for, what was it?
Yeah, Mike, do you remember the young man that just tried to buy that property?
Yep.
Did that have two separate, I know it had separate meters,
It has separate entrance.
but did it have two addresses?
No, not at the time you bought it. Just,
I was concerned about that one a lot.
that's still,
But that's where this would come in,
mhm.
would really help out on a case like that.
Rob just sort of said this, but if you had an ADU with a family member in it, and the family member leaves or passes away or whatever, I think that's what the intent of that sentence is, then you can rent it out. You can't tell them not to. I mean, I don't think we can't stipulate you can't rent it out. I don't think. I mean, otherwise you have something you can't use in your house. I don't think we have that much authority on. But if the intent is for it to be a family member, or, I mean, I don't even know if it needs to be a family member, but accessory dwelling unit it could be your best friend for all I know. But I don't think we can stipulate they can't rent it out. That's what kind of was the issue Mr. Manning brought up before, was how do we,
Yeah, and I don't
You know-
I think most of what you're gonna be able to do to control that at all is the owner occupancy. So
Yeah.
it doesn't turn into full-blown
Duplex.
rental Airbnb, is that owner occupancy requirement, but I do think that your options are
Like I
limited.
said, I have that question, somebody's purchasing a property, they're intending to rent it, the first question they ask me is, can they put an ADU in the backyard? And I said, not this time. And they're not gonna live in it. So that would probably be something we'd stipulate, you have to be owner occupied to have the ADU.
Which is really the driving force, right, is to have family, and the whole
Yeah. That's
policy behind
intent,
it is
yeah.
to help out aging parents, grandparents.
Right,
So if that person left, say my house is owner occupied,
Mm-hmm.
I want an ADU, and
Yes.
then we move to Colorado, go to the Rockies. I can rent out my house, but I have to rent it out as a full unit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can keep the house, but I'd have to rent out the ADU. I couldn't do it separate.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even have separate Airbnbs.
Right.
All be the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Is that's creating a duplex at that point, two renters.
policing these things is where you guys are all gonna help Mike justify his growing budget in the future. And enforcement by the park department and.
Yeah, how do, I know that you've had that issue in the past where people have had garage apartments and then they left and then now they're renting. How do you enforce that? Do we have that in the code already?
If a property's vacant for over a year, it loses its grandfather situation. So if somebody had an apartment that was built years ago and then it was vacant for over a year, and I've sent letters on that before, it's no longer legal. We have a duplex that happened to. It's no longer a legal rental property. They have to get a use variance if they want to reopen it. We had somebody do that a few years ago. She got a use variance.
Oh, but you can still do
The
it.
house she purchased, it was vacant for a long time, never finished, wanted to go back and complete it, and she got a use variance and then completed the unit, so. There's a process for that. Jim Mandan likes to say that, I don't mind quoting him, but we do have a process for anything that's on there, it's called a use variance, so, you know, there is the process for that. If it's not something that's approved or development standards variance, in the case of an extra accessory structure, like we were discussing a few months ago. I still want to revisit that, but not right now. So.
And I know you said you had the short-term rental ordinance kind of drafted.
Mhm.
Do you have this?
I have a rental ordinance about 75% drafted.
What about
Let's
the
see if I can
ADU
send
stuff?
it to you.
Is that done or no?
Hmm?
Is this one part of it, the ADU stuff?
These are the items that are gonna go into it. So these are this is an idea paper with all the ideas or concepts you wanna roll into the ordinance. So I have one drafted that I keep modifying as we go along, when I find time to do it, because I keep getting my time taken away, so. But it's about 23-24 pages long right now. So a lot of it's technical stuff about what should be in a property, size of rooms, types of HVAC, electrical, stuff like that. A lot of it's technical things, and then there's the parts that are basically process, permitting, or not permitting, registration and inspection and stuff like that.
And that won't go through plan, that'll go right,
It'll
go through us?
yeah, once we get the ideas down, the intent is that you're gonna see that next,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, because at some point, there'll be some process here, because there
Yeah.
will be some
There'll be an
zoning code, and
ordinance, yes.
it'll be very similar to the rezoning process.
Yeah.
There'll be public hearing and those kinds
Yeah.
of things.
And that'll go through you guys, so, I'm just keeping that off to the side because it's ponderous right now and it's not correct, so I don't really wanna muddy these up until we get the ideas right. I'm gonna put the ideas in there and make it work out, but it's got the rental section, and then the short-term section is kinda copied straight off the state code, because that's the best way to do it. And I do not have an ADU section except for a title for a section called
Not yet.
ADUs. Yeah, that's it.
So let me move things along by sort of reiterating what I think we've got a consensus for here, round it out, and then we can see what issues we've got left over. The meat of this stuff here is all under the draft guidelines bullet. So the first draft guideline bullet, it seems to me, because there's a consensus around following a special use exception type process as opposed to pure pre-authorization, we should strike the words by right. So ADUs may be built on a single-family homes, et cetera, change the word city to town. We may want to add some clarification in there about principal structure, although I'm not too worried about it because the third bullet, I think, actually does cover that. We'll get to that in a second. So the second one, we're going to change the application must first file for, we'll extend the applicants must file for a special use exception with an ADU. And we should expand that to provide at least some examples of what that process looks like, including supplying information with a view towards the issue that Terry raised.
Can I jump in real quick, back to the first item, just in case somebody doesn't understand? Who knows what R2 is?
Sorry?
R2. Does everybody know what R2 is? And that's why I want to stop you. R2 zoning is downtown Porter. It does not mean duplexes. It's
Right, oh,
just
yeah.
a different zone for the small lots of the old downtown. So R2 is this general downtown area. It's single family, it's just smaller lot sizes, and there's a separate code on that because the lot sizes do not meet our typical lots.
Right.
So that's why it's R2, just so you know.
The other change that we talked about making in that first paragraph was we hadn't listed lot coverage as one of the items that, to be addressed, and I think that'll especially come up in R2. So we have to
Yeah.
think through what we wanna communicate about that.
And they don't have to match.
Right.
So I have a cheat sheet that I posted on the website that has the residential zoning, the setbacks, the lot coverage. It's just a chart. So they don't have to be the same in R1 and R2. They could be different. So they already are different. In R1 and R2 have different lot coverages in different size houses, minimum.
And R2 may have two separate lot coverages if there's an ADU permitted. So that's where the code,
So we
you're gonna have to then go and reconcile the rest of these sections of the code
Right.
with what you're doing here, because there might be two different lot coverages in R2.
So I'll email everybody my cheat sheet with all that on it, because we'll need that going forward.
Yeah.
So Mike, would the new houses on Waverly that are going up, would they be under R2?
That's actually zoned R1, they're the same size lots as downtown.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, they're lots downtown are 50 by 125, that seemed to be very common in 1920s. So the neighborhood he's talking about, Dune Forest, has that size lot, 50 by 125. And that's where the new houses are being built, so they're basically on the same size lots as downtown.
So the next 5 bullets, there were no substantive changes. The one about there has to be an existing property, there's only one ADU for it, there should be a separate entrance. Anyone who gets denied this can still go to a BZA if they want, and good luck with that. And the one that has to do with owner occupancy is the last one there. So I don't think we made any significant changes there. We did talk about the issue with utilities, and basically we said, that's not what we're talking about. Utility will be driven by the utility company. We're not making any changes as any recommendations for that.
You know, like a lot of people build a garage, they put a separate meter in the garage if they want one. I don't think
It's up to them,
this
yeah.
drives that.
No,
It would just be,
that's between them and
if their
NIPSCO.
utilities are able to, and again, it depends on where you build it. If it's in the house or outside of the house, it would depend. If you're building a garage or building it in the garage, that's gonna be different. And then if you get into sewer, just to throw that in there, and you put a bathroom in your garage, you have to connect to your sewer somehow. If you're on a septic, you have to connect to septic, so that comes along in the building permit process.
And which may drive approval that they can't do
Right,
it because they
correct.
don't,
Might not be able
they're
to do that.
septic.
Yeah.
Mhm. But back, I have a question that, Rob, with what you said of good luck with that with the BZA. That confused me, and maybe I missed it, because all of this would be subject to BZA approval, right? That's what a special
That's
exception.
what's special. Right.
I don't think necessarily at all. Michigan City says a special use exception for accessory dwelling units is managed by the Plan Commission. Defining, you know, because under some definition of what an accessory dwelling unit is, so that it's obvious that.
Yeah, I think
that's
they
what
get to
it is.
decide who the deciding factors, but I don't think in that instance, you probably wanna make sure they're not getting two bites at the apple there. You're asking one way or the other.
Oh,
And I don't, unless you wanted to, I mean, Michigan City, yeah, that might have been, I don't know when that was passed and easily discernible, but that might have been just administrations and in between somebody not wanting the current constitution of the BZA and they like the process of the Plan Commission better, but in the way you operate, you may not need to take that out of the hands of the BZA. That's for your determination. And again, because there's a lot here that you may say, hey, we'd rather have the process before the Plan Commission. And so anyway, I just think it's important that there's not an end run and they think, just like those who want a variance and then because they don't want to go through the process of rezoning. We want to make sure that we foreclose them trying to get two bites at the apple.
hadn't thought of that. Good point.
Because if it's before you, frankly, it's not downplaying with the BZA.
No.
But that's it, right? I mean, usually it's the ultimate going before the plan commission versus going before BZA.
Yeah.
So that if you, the BZA wouldn't be involved at all.
They would be for a variance though, like, so, would they, I guess, would there be a reason for them to be involved at all? No, I guess no. Like-
No, if you're dictating that the special exception comes before you instead.
The only reason I'm interested in that is because I feel like, I think the BZA does a great job, but it's just, they're really busy, and I think maybe this would take the workload off a little bit. But that's just,
Well,
We're here at 8:07, so we work
Planning
hard
Commission
too.
has a higher workload of BZA, just FYI, so.
what?
Yeah, you have a higher workload,
What-
but you
higher
also have
workload,
more members too, right? So that
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
also help
Yeah.
drive some things, and not saying one process is more thoughtful than the other, but there's nothing wrong with having it before the plan commission.
Well, devil's advocate, to try to illustrate Tara's point. So I say, well, I think I want an accessory dwelling unit. And by the way, my building has to be built 3 feet from the property line. I insist, I can't make it work any other way. So Mike's gonna say, well, you can't get an accessory dwelling unit permit then. Oh, well then I'll go to the BZA.
Yeah, and I think there's some, right, that there might be a variance that's required, it's just not for the ADU, right? So that there might be something, there might be some, yes. So there might be,
Bingo, okay.
yeah, sometimes when you're doing a PUD and there's some, this was an example that Mike pointed out to the applicants earlier, they needed 3 different things, 2 of which was under your purview. So it might be that you approve an ADU subject to variance, and if they don't get it, then you don't get the ADU. And vice versa. Or they could go to the BZA first and say, we need this development standard variance for setbacks. And if they say it's granted, subject to you getting approved for the ADU, and if you don't, then you can't cut that extra 3 feet. So, yeah, they would have to be coordinated, but my point was, you're not gonna get denied by the building, or the plan commission, and then think you get a variance for an ADU. I think we're all saying the same thing.
Okay,
Maybe
I think so. This isn't the code. This is the framework document,
Yes.
Mike's idea document. The codes will say what needs to be said. If anything needs to be said about the BZA, the code will say it. And I think what your point is, you probably don't need to say anything. You're just talking about special use case. You're not changing the role of the BZA.
I think the only specialty will be here is if, to the point you're discussing, is if you decide ADU approval before the plan.
At the
commission.
PC rather than the BZA.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
And if we do that and the ADU requires a variance, then they're gonna have.
They
to
got 2
they're
meetings.
gonna have to go to 2 meetings.
Bingo. And we don't need to explain that in the framework document here.
Yeah, that'll just be something they're subject to.
Yeah. All right, that clears that up.
And most of the times, everybody should probably do parallel, right? I mean, if they're smart about it, you're gonna do parallel filings and,
But that would be the pre-authorization again, so
Yes.
if there's some sort of checklist form that they'd go through first for, I'm gonna say guidance, because that's typically what I give people as guidance.
you said,
Yeah.
you
yeah.
approved.
So, you know, if I give you guidance, here's the guidance, but it might then say, well, you are required to get a variance for that. Cause
Right.
I'm, among other things, I'm the BZA administrator, I'm the Plan Commission administrator, that's why everything goes through me first. I go over all the applications with them, I help them fill them out and all that, that's one of my pile of titles I have, so, I do that anyway.
Well, and then there's the building permits and the certificates of occupancy.
Yeah,
right? So
and I do
it's
that
one step.
anyway, so it's just another thing I'm gonna do anyway, but it formalizes it, and we could say, here, fill this out, do this, there's no fee, you know, just fill it out, we can look at it, and then give you the proper guidance, that's all.
Well, we can recommend anything that we want. I'm leaning a certain way. At the end of the day, the town council will decide where it should
Right,
go.
yeah.
Because we're just an advisory group.
Well, and back to your point though, and not that it's a money grab, and we've discussed it in other things, is maybe there is a fee, right? I mean, some communities have, which puts a building commissioner in a tough spot, but a pre-determined of, hey, I am spending time on this. This isn't approval because some towns have a building commission that looks at every application, and it takes 6 months to build a screen endpoint, which is awful. But there might be a process where you say, hey, there is a $50 application fee because he is spending a lot of time, which then helps offset those administrative costs.
I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I am in favor of the fees. I think that there's a cost. I think there should be a cost.
Yeah, I mean, and especially if it's not exorbitant.
Yeah, if it's
And,
20, 50.
I mean, you're not allowed to, but you certain, I mean, 50 probably doesn't even sufficiently cover it, it's just
Not
as an
$20,
example.
$25, no.
Yeah.
Maybe in 1980. Well, that's a very good point. I think that
Yeah,
should,
typically fees with our wonderful new clerk treasurer, fees are basically set by how much time it takes to do something.
yeah, appropriately
You can't
so.
just make up random large numbers, you have to be
No.
appropriate
Yeah, I
to how
think-
much time it takes to review.
People do, myself included, take advantage of your time.
No, you guys can call me anytime.
Yes.
People call me all the time, so.
I don't want a fee for my, but if I'm asking for building advice, maybe.
Yeah, because it takes away from the other thing, there is a real cost that you could attribute to that,
I want a fee for Brian as well.
a Brian fee.
Any park department issues.
Okay, the last thing that we said we would circle back and revisit is this whole issue of how many people live there, the crowding issue. So, when I was doing the research after we threw it away last time, I came across the Munster Code. And Munster Code says, the number of persons in a dwelling unit, and then it says why, health and welfare. It says in every dwelling unit, 2 or more rooms, any room occupied by sleeping purposes by one occupant shall be at least 70 square feet. You paying attention, Jim? This is for you. And any room occupied for sleeping purposes by more than one occupant shall contain at least 50 square feet. And then it says, and this is what the state code covers. So that's true.
The minimum size sleeping room is 70 square feet per code, minimum dimension
Bingo.
is 7 feet. So 7 by 10 is the minimum size bedroom you can have per
Yeah.
International Building Code and the State of Indiana Code.
But what do you do, Mike? I had 3 guys that worked for me, had 9 kids each.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying the room can't be smaller than 70 square feet. That's a
Well,
small room.
they didn't live in big houses with 9 kids, believe me.
I know. So there's a minimum size per room. I put that in the rental code. It's gotta be in there.
Bingo. I think if that's in the rental code,
Yeah.
I think that is that's probably all we can do. And the advantage of it being there is it clearly sends a message, well, if you're gonna rent, this is the guideline you're looking for.
Yeah.
And in the form of, when people register, then they'll write down, this is how many people live there.
ADU must meet all local, state, and federal building codes, whatever you want, however you want to word that.
Yeah.
It's just gonna have to meet all the codes regardless, and that's the minimum habitable room for sleeping is 70 square feet.
So the advantage of that being visible in our town code is that for people who are planning to rent, long-term or short-term, they have guidance that says, well, this is what our expectation is. We're not doing anything different what the state is, but we're highlighting it.
It doesn't say you can't have a 12-foot ceiling and a four stack bunk bed. It
Right.
just says 70 square
Right,
feet.
and we're not talking about somebody who buys a house that has 9 kids, nope.
Yeah.
We're talking about,
Yeah, and going back to your point, what it is the town defining what the vision is for because it's prevalent, right? And going back, I haven't shared with everybody, right, but with Fishers and Carmel who have adopted, and they went and they have 10% of every subdivision is the max that can be rent. I mean, it's just defining, right? And some of the issues are that you have these national real estate firms that are coming in, building up and renting out with no regard to what your community is. So you're right, there are some people who would say, all right, I can't rent this out. I'm gonna sell it and move to another community. Not that you're trying to force people out, but what it's defining is how you are shaping your community with, and being able to make sure that, more importantly, the rentals are habitable, right? Up to code, people aren't living, and he's getting these complaints, and usually it's people who are at the end of it and are angry about it and wanna turn somebody in, but anyway, I think more so is setting those standards. But there will be some harsh results, as you're saying, of some people who might not be able to rent their house.
To the number that they had in mind.
Yes.
They can still rent their house.
You're right.
But they can't advertise it for, you can have 25 people here.
That's right.
Right. I think Mike, the resolution is there. You've already built it into the code. I just think we need to refer to it. And I think it solves the problem as best we can. I'm content with it. Okay, any other comments before we can wrap this up?
No, I think you've done good, Rob. You got through it.
I like it. I think you're actually doing what the planning commission should do, discuss all this and really think it through like that. I like Chris's comments about, you know, the reality of it and what we're doing, the work that we're doing, and I'm really
We have
grateful
good
for
help.
everybody's work, Mike.
Yeah, it's a novel concept for, right, process, and
So when we get back together again, go ahead.
We will also be able to, so say, I am leaning towards the special exception, I kind of like it. Say I read the special exceptions and I say, no, this is not good, we can still change it, right? Like,
We're gonna look at it again. We'll look
you're
at,
nowhere close to the
Okay, just-
approval. And at the end of the day, the town council will have the final.
I mean, actually 3 steps, I think, Chris. We're gonna get the polished check document, framework document back and look at it next month. There is the code that is being driven by this.
Yes.
And then there's the, so there's actually, I think, 3 steps of looking at this again.
At least, yes.
At least.
For sure, which is great. There's a lot of process, but there's at least that.
At least that, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go with
All done.
special use exception.
Okay.
Okay? So, thank you all so much for sticking around. Boy, would I like to hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Thank you all. And thank you, Karen, for pinch hitting.
Yes.
You're a trooper. Next time, try to get a shorter one.
You didn't even yell.
Or